We are live in Southern California at San Diego's Golf Industry Show 2019. This is the GCSAA TV live stage brought to you by Lebanon Turf. I'm Frank Rossi. I'm joined by Mike Slattery, Director of Product Management for
Schiller Grounds Care.
For Schiller Grounds Care, here to talk about Steiner's.
Yes, sir.
Steiner mowers, right? So, Mike, slope mowing, Steiner's, I've been around long enough to know these are workhorse pieces of equipment.
Very much so.
These are low center of gravity. You know, you can tell these things are really built for the terrain and the kinds of things we do on golf courses, and not just golf courses, but you sell these kinds of equipment everywhere. Tell me a little bit about the background of the Steiner company and the idea of developing a mower that sort of did what this thing does.
Certainly. So Steiner was, built with the idea that you need to do more than one thing with a tractor. So it has an out front capability. You can see the attachments, which helps you to see the work without having to look back all day. Better visibility. Like, for example, if you're mowing, you can see low hanging areas and see the mower navigate underneath.
As opposed to if it was a bush hog behind you.
Right. But also then change from that mower and put on an aerator, put on a rototiller, put on a stump cutter or a debris blower to blow off leaves from the fairway, for example.
So lots of different implements that the Steiner attachments can be placed on. Today we want to talk a little bit about slope cutting, right? This is a big part of, unfortunately architects do it to us, but sometimes the land, that's what it does, and
yes,
we still have to cut the grass there. Now, of course, you have to cut the grass at one height if it's really in a playable area, but at a different height if it's a waste area. So it has to handle a high volume of tissue sometime, right?
Yes.
Leaf tissue,
Yep,
but also some slope. So what is it about the Steiner that makes it well suited for these slope adaptations?
So on slopes specifically, the Steiner, you can run dual tires or single tires with wheel extensions. So with the wheel extensions, you get a 3-inch extension on the tires, so it's a wider stance. That allows you to go up to about a 25-degree slope versus normally a 20. But you can also go to dual tires on all 4 points of the tractor. That'll give you up to a 30-degree slope capability. Now, most people don't even appreciate what 30 degrees is until they actually realize they can't see the ground in front of them anymore, and they start wondering where they're at. So,
so let's just bring it back to normal conditions. If you don't have a mower adapted for slope conditions, what is the OPEIA or OSHA standards on how safe it is to? We got a lot of slopes. I've put my fair share of mowers in bunkers in my career from probably going on a little too slope than I should have been. Is there some standards for slopes for normal mowing conditions?
Yeah, I think the big thing with mower safety, slope mowing safety, is to have the right equipment that's set up for that kind of terrain. First educate your people on how steep is your slope on a course. They don't always know. You send someone out, they may not know what a 20 or 30 degree slope is. Secondly, make sure you have equipment that's designed and rated for that. Like I explained with Steiner, with the right tires, we can get 30-degree slopes.
So mowers are going to have slope ratings?
Some mowers will, some advertise it, the Steiner.
So when you don't do your extension to make it adapted to the slope, how much slope would I go on with a normal Steiner?
Standard Steiner's rated for a 20-degree slope.
20-degree slope. And you can make it up to a 30-degree slope.
Right. If you add the dual tires.
If you add the dual tires. Now, you're also putting the mower on the front. Is the mower adapter the same? It's just making the tractor itself sturdy.
With Steiner, the tractor is designed to handle those slopes. With the out front mower, whether it's our flex deck mower, which is an 80-inch wide cut that follows contours, so as you're working alongside the bunkers or the green tees boxes, you have that ability to follow contours.
So there must have been something you guys saw that said we need to develop this, right? I mean, the need for this 30% slope is a pretty steep slope. Most people are going to look at it and say, maybe I'm not even sure I should be mowing it. So you must have seen a safety issue, because people must not be paying attention enough to that safety.
Well, I think people are paying attention to safety, but it was a way of giving people more capability in contour mowing. The market didn't seem to have much that went past, say, 70 inches in contour mowing, or even 60.
Right.
So we gave them that extra width at 80 inches, but also that 30-degree capability.
Right.
But one of the things that factored into our decision was the versatility, giving courses the ability to get more out of their equipment. Tractor's the biggest piece of the investment in this solution, so having that thing parked in a barn because all it does is mow was a limitation.
So what about productivity? You made it 8 inches wide. Obviously safety is a key component, but productivity must matter with this unit.
The productivity factors in, and then the tractor is highly productive. The big thing though is that it does a good job of getting a lot of coverage while doing it safely for the operator.
And in some tough terrain.
Yeah, obviously
Because
courses.
it's not just slope. You're talking about a slope that might also be undulating. So
True.
the deck articulates.
In the particular case of the contour mower, the flex deck that we offer, it does. It's 4 individual decks, 21 inches each, 3 pivot points, and the point there is that you don't bridge as you're going over that undulating terrain. But you mentioned rough terrain or more difficult terrain. A lot of courses, more and more we're seeing, want to go and do rough cutting. They want to go brush cutting, whether it's to open up visibility to properties that have residentials, they want to see the course, or to just speed up play, or to break down wind barriers so that more wind can come through and dry the conditions. So we have a 72-inch wide brush cutting attachment called the rough cut. So you put that on the front of the Steiner with either the 4 tires or the 2 or the 8. You get the ability to work rough vegetation on steep slopes, or on level ground, or on soft, wet ground.
So what are we talking about rough vegetation? We're talking about certain stump size, wood size?
The rough cut can cut up to 1.5-inch diameter. And if you're thinner materials, you can cut the full 72-inch swath and just keep going ahead.
So has this already seen some success? Guys now this is an attachment to the Steiner.
It is, but the Steiner has been developed to accommodate the rigors that come with brush cutting. So we have a very thick steel skid plate underneath the front and rear section. So if you were to cut off a stump and then drive across that stump, you're not going to hang up and rip the bottom of the tractor apart.
Yeah.
It has good airflow around the engine compartment. So when you're brush cutting, you create a lot of debris floating in the area. We're not sucking all that in and overheating because of that condition.
These are things that probably most people wouldn't notice at first, but would make or break whether the unit would work. Because yes, if you're going to do brush cutting, you're heading into the woods.
Right.
It's not been graded.
Exactly.
It's not leveled at all. So do the tires move themselves? Or I mean, obviously they're sturdy. They're not articulating. So having those plates underneath is protecting the unit from being sort of gouged.
For certain. But also, you mentioned to the axles, we have an oscillation frame. So what that means is the front and rear section will be able to migrate this way. So when you are working slopes or uneven terrain, let's say there's stumps or rocks and you're on a steeper slope, the ability to have that front section pivot up and down and keep the back level means you keep all tires in engagement on the ground evenly. So you're not shifting weight, and you're more stable and more secure as you're moving forward.
So what is one of the things you've talked about is the many uses that these things have. From your experience working with your grounds company, how much time is a Steiner out and about? I mean, is it sitting in the shop much? Are many of your customers using the variety of attachments? Because I know it for a little bit of rough mowing, I know it for blowing debris, but I'm not familiar with a lot of the other tools. Is that seeing more success? That idea of don't just get something that does one thing, get something that does many things. Has that been something? Because that seems like a hard. Yeah. The tractor's got a lot of engineering. It's not inexpensive. It is the most expensive part, right?
In the solution, yeah.
In the solution, right? So obviously, then buying the attachments looks more efficient, right? Are you seeing these things being used the way you hope they would be, or are you still seeing, boy, we would like to see more people doing this with our Steiners?
Now, we find they're doing a good, it really depends on the customer. If they have true brush cutting challenges, like I spoke to a gentleman a couple weeks ago, very rough terrain, very steep terrain, and he's got to deal with the rough cut, the brush cutting application. Right. He was having trouble with tires getting punctured. We have an 8-ply tire, so it's a strong tire. So he was buying us, and primarily he was just doing that brush cutting. He had enough work that kept him busy seasonally. That's what he did. It solved his problem. Then we have other people that they'll use it for contour mowing around the tee boxes and the greens.
Right.
But then randomly, golf courses have to deal with stumps. So they have a stump grinder, they'll run out and use it. So it's not that they use it a lot, but they can solve their problem themselves when they need to. And in the fall, of course, with the leafy debris that falls, you get a turbine blower on the front of a Steiner. Well, number one, you're not looking backwards to see where the debris is going. You're looking at where the material is moving. You can adjust the nozzle with the hydraulic control of the tractor to direct the flow of the material. And of course, it's high production, high speed. So,
so let's, we got about 5 more minutes to chat about innovations, but to me, that's a pretty sturdy unit. What about the motor? Is there something unique about the engine and the drivetrains that makes Steiner more powerful or more useful, or is it just you set everything lower to the ground? Talk a little bit about the mechanics of it, the nuts and bolts of the engine and operation of it.
So with Steiner, we have moved towards a gear type pump instead of a gyrotor pump.
Okay.
What that's done is it's given us a higher capacity of flow and pressure. So we run 6 gallons a minute, 1,750 PSI for our auxiliary hydraulics.
Oh, nice.
That by itself is a very powerful system, but then we went a step further, and by going to the gear pump instead of a gyrotor pump, we get more efficiency. So the hydraulic power we're capable of, we can hold under load. There's a more efficient system. The other thing is cooling or not overheating. So we designed a system with larger diameter lines, fewer fittings, and a large cooler. So the hydraulics on the Steiner are very robust. They run cool in high ambient temperatures, and all that leads to productivity and getting the job done.
So if people are buying Steiners, you tell them they don't need a big tractor, farm-sized tractor. Yes, they can do just about everything. The horsepower on these things is enough to do almost anything a big tractor can do?
Within a range. I wouldn't tell someone they don't need a big tractor as much as I would ask what they're trying to do with the big tractor. What we're coming to with Steiner is great versatility, almost 30 attachments at the front. We have a rear 3-point hitch capability.
So you got 30 attachments.
Almost 30.
And then a rear point attachment.
A 3-point hitch. So if you were to say buy a typical subcompact tractor, they'll have a PTO out the back and a 3-point hitch. Well, Steiner has an option to run a 3-point on the back. So you can run a number of attachments that are common in the golf industry on the back of a Steiner because of that 3-point hitch option. But we also have up to 37 horsepower, which is plenty for a lot of applications in golf. There are places where more horsepower is right. Now you have to debate between buying that extra power but also buying a tractor that's much heavier. The Steiner, we talked about slope mowing, safety, and the abilities, but what we didn't talk about is the soft ground condition capability.
That's correct.
When you take a Steiner, it's very light on its feet, as standard. If you double up the tires, you're reducing the ground pressure substantially. You can work more longer in wetter conditions and not disturb the turf.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because this is a device well adapted to turf conditions. Because listen, it's raining back east a fair amount, right?
I mean, it's raining here.
It's just hard to, don't get me started. It's hard to get out just to do the work. So maybe the Steiner made it a little bit better, a little bit easier for the guys to get out to do the work they needed to do. But I like that it seems soft on one hand, but at the same time, you're driving this thing right into the woods. And I think it is worth guys considering, because, listen, we all like big things. So we like equipment. Obviously, the trade show, big tractors are good. I like your point. What are you trying to do? Do you need that extra horsepower? Because it seems like you're getting the most horsepower out of into the hydraulic system. That's what the pumpings have done, right?
Yeah.
Maximize that
for the
power
auxiliary functions, like lifting the
function.
attachments or turning things. But the efficiency to the drivetrain itself has always been there. We run transaxles on the front and rear, so we have 4-wheel drive.
Excellent.
One thing we didn't hit on too is on that slope mowing, and it's one of the most standout features that Steiner has.
Right.
The Steiner 450 has what's called hydraulic weight transfer.
Right.
So what happens is you're up on a slope and it's a little bit slippery. While you're driving, you just reach to your right, turn a dial, and it will shift the weight from the attachment to the front tires a little bit. That gives you increased stability.
Yeah.
The other option, and our older tractors had this, is to do it mechanically. But what happens then is you have to stop and potentially drive off the slope, get level, mechanically position what you want, hope you got the weight transfer you wished, and then go back up and get back to work. That's lost productivity.
Yeah.
So on-the-fly weight transfer is a really big deal. On
Innovation, safety, workhorse of a tractor, brush cutting, slopes. We've wrapped it up. Mike, so great to see you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining me.
Appreciate
Good luck on the trade show. What booth number?
I wish I could tell you, but we're that way.
Okay, it's that way. Great. Thanks for joining me. This is the GCSAA TV live stage here in San Diego 2019. I'm Frank Rossi. We'll be right back.